Tales of Arise won RPG of the Year at the 2021 Game Awards. That's pretty impressive stuff. I bought the game at the end of 2021, but with an ever-growing backlog, it took me until earlier this year to get around to finishing it. But I am certainly glad that I did, because I had a brilliant time. I do love a good JRPG, but I don't get to play many of them due to the monstrous length of them, and the only previous Tales game I've played was Tales of Berseria, a game I loved and did make a video on that you should definitely watch, by the way. Depending on what kind of gamer you are, Tales of Arise will be a step forward for you, or a step back for you. It all depends on what you desire from these type of games. Tales of Arise does feel like a more streamlined version of the Tales formula you've grown to know and love. Everything from the characters to the mechanics has been stripped back a little bit in order to become more accessible towards newcomers, which I do think was the aim of this game. In that regard, if you're new to the series or to JRPGs, this is a very good first step. Let's firstly speak about the story. Tales of Arise has a story that annoyed me greatly, not because it's particularly bad per se, because it's not, but because it went in a direction I really didn't care all too much for. I was gripped for, I'd say, around 2/3 of the 40-hour runtime, but once that final act came upon us, I started to slowly lose interest. This may very well be personal, because I'm really not overly into sci-fi stuff, all that much. And this game does lean into that direction a lot towards the end. I did really like the characters, even if they were a lot more two-dimensional than I was hoping for. Everyone in your party is essentially just a good person who wants to save the world. Obviously, they may have more personal motivations such as revenge or regret, but it's very much a good versus evil story here. Compare this to Berseria, where each party member has significant flaws, bound together by a mutual, selfish reason for embarking on their quest together. I just felt there was a lot more depth to that story, and that's not to say that Arise is cookie cutter, because it isn't. This is quite clearly a story about racism and the effects of division across two worlds. It's a sensitive topic with a strong message that does its job. I'll always appreciate a story that picks a theme and sticks to it. I just think that from a character perspective, Berseria was a lot stronger. I liked the cast as people, but as characters, they fell a little flat for me. I can't quite put my finger on exactly why, but I was so much more engrossed in the combat in Arise. Berseria felt a little button mashy for me, whereas in Arise I felt a lot more comfortable chaining attacks together, paying much more attention to my AG, and customising my combos for maximum effect. If you're unaware, you can bind your attacks to the buttons you want, so you have full control over which abilities you choose to use. The combat is almost as deep as you want it to be, which is pretty cool. I thought the bosses were awesome in spectacle, and were pretty cool in practice as well, although they do love to reuse a fair few, which isn't unheard of in JRPGs. This game does take the gravitas up a level. Some of these battles are insane in spectacle, as I mentioned before. The presentation is excellent. And we've not even spoken about how gorgeous this game looks. This thing is magnificent. The world you're exploring is exceptional. Such a cool place to explore. I was always travelling from main story location to main story location with eager anticipation for what I'd find next, and I was very rarely let down. In terms of mechanics, there's not too much going on. You have a weapon, which you basically just choose the highest damage, and then accessories you can find or craft that will give you specific buffs. That's all that really goes into it. Some may find that underwhelming, but for a game that strives to be somewhat accessible, it does prevent newcomers from feeling bombarded with systems. But there's still tons to do. There's the main quest, which will probably take between 30 to 40 hours to beat. There's 70 side quests, very few of which are interesting, but they're there. There's a farm you can run, there's collectibles to collect, and the endgame bosses are also pretty cool. Ultimately, Tales of Arise is a game that I feel is very strong, and did a brilliant job doing what it tried to do. It tries to be a JRPG that appeals to new fans whilst giving returning fans enough to enjoy. Personally, I preferred Berseria due to the supporting cast in that game being much stronger, but by almost every other metric, I would say Arise is probably better. The big question is, where do they go from here? Tales of Arise was a huge commercial success, so do they double down on the simplicity, or show these new fans what a Tales of game is really about? We'll have to wait for that answer, but either way, I will be there. Thank you for making it to the end of the video. I hope that you did enjoy it. If you did, then please consider leaving a like, as that would help me out greatly. And if you want to see more videos like this one, then possibly consider subscribing so you can watch more of them. But for now, that's all from me. Have a nice day, and goodbye.